there, welcome back to the final show of the week. This is cinema releases. One really good and one really terrible. Well, first of all, I'm going to look at Suicide Squad. Or The Suicide Squad. It's the reboot, don't know what the hell it is, version of the comic book that kind of ignores but kind of acknowledges the previous Suicide Squad film that made a lot of money even though no one seemed to like it much because it starred Will Smith. This one that didn't star Will Smith. James Gunn, after his problems with the Guardians films at Disney, so when he was fired from Guardians 3, he came over and did this, and he was rehired for Guardians 3, so he's off doing that now. So this was his in-between film for DC, an R-rated Suicide Squad movie, which they've been trying to produce this for years, and no one could find a way to do it because the first one, everyone knew the first one didn't work, and it was like, how do you do this? And James Gunn just made it really silly. Now, I've got to say straight away, I adored this film. This was wonderful. This is great. I've pre-ordered the 4K. It's like one of those films that's like, yeah, this one's great. This one is a keeper kind of movie. This is just so well done. And it is so silly. So if you don't like it, I get it, because it is silly. It is genuinely silly. But it's a lot of fun. It's a man in a mission movie with lots of women in it. It's that kind of thing. It's a really cynical, like 80s canon movie with a budget and lots of exploding heads, and they've had time to do everything right, and you've got big like kaiju monsters later on in the film, and you've got all these character actors popping in for sometimes 3 minutes, sometimes half an hour. You know, everyone gets a little moment in the sun, and then they're gone again. It is just genuinely wonderful. It's so silly though, which is part of the charm, because Suicide Squad is silly. I mean, it's always been one of the best DC concepts. Suicide Squad, a bunch of petty criminals forced to go and do a mission by the government, and if they don't oblige, their heads blow off. That's it. It's really simple. And there's all these villains who are like C-list villains who pop up for the kind of weaker stories in any Batman or Superman or the Flash story. It's those kind of characters who are in this film. And as you see behind me, there's one called Polka Dot Man, which was viewed as one of the silliest villain characters ever, and they make it work in this film. So they're all going to sit in this one mission, and basically, James Gunn directs this as if it's a Paul Verhoeven movie, violence-wise. We have people getting killed left, right, and centre. If you've seen Starship Troopers, you know what you're in for. It's that kind of comic book violence where heads go left, right, and centre. Characters who you think are safe get brutally murdered, like left, right, and centre. It's a big Verhoeven influence, but it's also because James Gunn, there's also a sweetness to it as well. So even though the characters are cynical, they've been damaged by life, you do get to see the softer sides, but there is a kind of cynical comic book side to it as well. And it is looking at a cynical way of how America tends to abuse South American countries and mess them about and leave the people to pick up the bill, because they just want what they want from these countries and just leave the mess behind. That's a big social comment in the film. America's nasty to South America. Something that's been on for like 50 years, and very few films ever acknowledge. You know, usually in a older 80s film, they would begin into these countries, and the guys in these countries would be the villains. I mean, if you look at the Expendables 1, there's that plot, like the petty dictator, and they're going to take him out, and it's going to solve all the problems, and it's like, yeah, but there's going to be another one coming along anytime soon. This one, the guy who solved the guy who killed, it was after that's happened, where basically the dictator's been overthrown, and suddenly the CIA has these like scientific site in the country where they have to blow up, otherwise it implicates them. And it turns out the people who took over are just as bad as the original dictators who were US financed, and there's still people in the middle of nowhere fighting against these new dictators. So there's a nice cynical feel to it that really is really enjoyable, and a bit more knowledge about how the world works and how America funds things, and a lot of films would dare to be. Well, having that thing of, hey, we're a big silly comic book movie. We can sneak these things in because we can, because no one's paying attention. So, you've got that cynicism, all these interesting characters. Idris Elba, you see behind me. I'll try and move my head so you can see him. He's like the lead, he's basically the Deadshot replacement, who's much more interesting than Deadshot. So basically Will Smith was meant to be in the film, then he couldn't do it, so Idris Elba's replaced him, but they made a different character, which worked better actually, because they made the character much more dysfunctional, and he's just not in a good place, and he's a problem with his daughter, and it works a lot better than Deadshot, because he's much more flawed and interesting way, and Idris Elba's honestly a better actor. So there is that feel, and he's a much more nuanced actor. He's quieter, but he's a much more gruff, cynical look at the world. You've got Peacemaker played by John Cena, who's a patriot first and foremost, and who's a bit delusional, wears a ridiculous outfit, and he's also a criminal who'll kill anybody for peace. And he's very dodgy. Don't trust him at all. You've got Ratcatcher 2, the woman we see there. She's been damaged. Her father was a drug addict. She can control rats, and is close to rats. And Idris Elba's character hates rats from a children's incident. So they start to bond over time. And you've also got Polka Dot Man there, who's very dominating mother who did the experiments on him, which created the polka dot ability to throw these polka dots, and they cause a lot of damage. And if he doesn't expel them every twice a day, he'll blow up. So he's a very tragic character, and he's very haunted by his mother. You've got Harley Quinn for the first one, who's just as crazy as ever. And you've got King Shark, who's he's a shark with legs, and he's not very bright, and he's voiced by Sylvester Stallone. They have one of the squads. There's two squads are sitting at the same time, and it's a case of, okay, one of them might make it. Which one will make it? It's so cynical. The film is just like, well, they're sending two squads and hoping one of them will succeed. And basically, you see lots of characters die, and other characters get injured, and some of the characters escape from like Harley Quinn and Rick Flag, Rick Flag's the other character in the first one, another character in the first one, and they're all having to try and survive this massacre of many Suicide Squad members on a beach, and it's like it's not a good start for them. But you've got these two sets of characters, and they have to kind of, the survivors of that one and the other team have to join up and go and do the mission. And it's just a lot of fun. It's really silly. There's crazy stuff. Like Harley Quinn's got her own little story dealing with the dictators as well, which has some nice payoffs and just some crazy stuff happening. This is the best Harley Quinn's been in any of the movies, because James Gunn's really good at writing her, and the craziness you get in the cartoons of Harley Quinn finally comes over to the live action. I never thought she was crazy enough in the first two times you've seen her. This one, she's crazy. She's genuinely crazy, and often a world of her own half the time. And you've got lots of side characters, actors who James Gunn's used before, who turn up just to die, basically, as a dark joke. Lots of characters die. I mean, this film has a huge body count of characters who in other films would have made it to the end. And you're going to have some characters you really like die. Just is. And they're not going to die in very dignified ways. But it is hilarious, and it is really funny how they do it. But they've also got the sweet side of, you learn more about the Ratcatcher story, you learn more about the Polka Dot Man story, you learn more about Idris Elba's story, and you get more character interactions. You get some more. You get to see why they're traumatized and why they act like they did, but you also get loads and loads of funny action. I mean, the thing is, this action done with a sense of humour, which is very different from the first one. No one's trying. I mean, even when they've been cool, there's jokes here at their expense. They're pretty snarky. They make some horrible mistakes in this film, which is really fun. I mean, one of the best bits about the film is how many mistakes they make. how petty they can be to each other, how silly and strange and weird the film can be. And you've a giant starfish, which you've seen the trailers at the end as the big villain. You've also got Peter Capaldi playing a character who would be a Doctor Who villain, you know, who in this one is played by one of Doctor Who's, which is quite a nice little twist. And he has some nice bits as well. He's a bit of a skeezy character. But each character has their moments. Everyone has their little bits and bobs, and Viola Davis as Amanda Waller leading them from the far behind as a person saying, "If you don't do that, I'll blow you up, blow your head off." She's watching from home, and she's much more villainous in this one. She's just nasty in this one, which is great fun because this character's better when she's nasty. And just the whole film is just really enjoyable. It's just silly, but also it always works. And all the character moments really work because when people die, after the first early jokes, deaths, when people die later on, there are stakes to it. Things happen for a reason. But you also just have this sense of humour about the film. It's just nice and ridiculous. It's a perfect summer film where there's a right balance of silliness you want from a summer film, but also enough soul to it so you can really rewatch it and there's a great rewatch value. I mean, this one is probably going to have that kind of Predator feel of it. It's like you're going to watch it just for the characters, you'll enjoy the characters, even though you know what's going to happen. Just watch them interact and behave is going to be as much fun as watching a new film, really. It's just that kind of film. It's just a type of film done just so good. It's a great rewatch value. And you can just enjoy the little nuances of the little jokes, the behind the scenes jokes, the subtle jokes that are thrown in that most directors would have ignored. And you've got a lot of there's some gratuitous deaths that are hilarious that most directors would not do. Could be like, that's too silly, that's too cruel. No, they do it in this film. They really do push the envelope in the kind of dark cruelty vein, really. It's a real shame it's been released during coronavirus time, and it hasn't done as well as it should have. I think because it's an R-rated film, it was always going to have problems. But it's hard for people to get people out when no one's quite sure cinemas are safe, and it's relying on HBO Max, and it's just quite a bad time. I mean, I'd be happy it exists. I mean, you probably won't see any sequels to this one because it hasn't done as well as it probably would have done otherwise. But be just happy it exists. And it's also almost good that it probably won't have a sequel because where can you go with this one? This one's perfect. This is the Suicide Squad movie you wanted. This is it. It's been done. You don't need another one. So that's a good thing about it. But, it's terrific. And it looks so much better when you look at the other film I'm going to talk about now. Who does everything wrong. Yeah, Jungle Cruise. What a pile of crap. But the amazing thing, Emily Blunt starred in one of my other favourite films of the summer, which was Quiet Place 2, which was a really good film. And then she's in this one, which is the worst thing I've seen all summer. This is terrible. This one is... where do you start on this one? Did The Rock read the scripts anymore? Did he ever read scripts? But now you've got to ask the question. I mean, here's the thing about Rock is people criticised him a couple of years ago for choosing bad projects that got by his charm of personality. And it was like, okay, maybe we can push him to try and do better projects and try and push himself a bit harder. And he seems to have reacted by making worse projects. He seems to have gone Adam Sandler and tried to choose the drekiest scripts ever. I mean, it's quite shocking. I mean, generally, with The Rock now, it's like, is he in a film with someone else who's good? Is the thing you have to actually look at. Because if anyone seen Skyscraper, that's still one of the worst films of the last decade. That's terrible. It's a Die Hard rip-off that literally rips off Die Hard being a bit tall building. There's no invention there at all. And it's a terrible film. It's woefully bad. You keep on working with the same directors who make these bad films and makes other ones with them. You get something like Rampage where it's not a very good film. I enjoy it because I like kaiju movies, but it's not very good. And it's got lots of script problems. And basically the guy playing the cowboy Jeffrey Dean Morgan, he steals the film from that one. And it's like, generally The Rock, if he's in a Fast and Furious movie or in Jumanji, you have other actors with him, and they seem to be better done. I mean, the funny thing about him leaving Fast and Furious, it's like, well, there was actually a good balance for The Rock. I mean, I know it's probably because him and Vin Diesel do not get on, but it's like, well, The Rock added like a bit of silliness to it, which helped to offset the Vin Diesel seriousness. But Vin Diesel's seriousness helped The Rock look a bit more weighty than he does normally. You know, it's like it was a weird mix that kind of worked. Like the mix of like the melodrama of one side and the silliness of the other side kind of helped each other. When The Rock's by himself, the films just look really lightweight and silly and look like Disney films, which this one is. But they all feel like that. They all feel just like why am I watching this? And you're getting by with The Rock. But in this one, he has a script that's terrible, that has no focus. It literally just wanders around the jungle for a while, and it has these little points it'll try to reach, but nothing's given any weight. And eventually you turn around and go to this little side bit and discover this thing, and other things happen. And what I've just described is how you feel watching it. Because nothing's given any weight, nothing's dramatic weight. You don't feel there's any momentum going in these films. It just feels like things happen. And other things happen, and there's nothing more weight. And sometimes that down to The Rock. Because he is so focused on taking the mickey at himself, being silly, that even when he gets to do the dramatic stuff, he's an eye in the silly, and he doesn't deliver the dramatic stuff at all in this film. It's like most dramatic scenes should have been redone and done properly because they have no weight to them, like, at all. He absolutely sinks the drama side of this film. Emily Blunt's trying her hardest to keep it going. She's good, finding a very limited part, but she's trying. So I don't blame her for this. The director's trying to keep this thing going as well. He's like a decent director. He's trying to keep it fun and keep it light, but it's no script. The script's just things happen. Do we have a villain that's actually scary in any way? No. Do we have any momentum for any bit of villainy to keep us interested? No. Things happen. Just you've got these old conquistadors who are centuries old, and they're up to no good. And one of them is based on the same guy, played by Klaus Kinski in Acquire Wrath of God. But they barely show up, and then when they do, they barely do anything interesting. And it's like, you're basically Pirates of the Caribbean extras or mummy extras type of thing. But they don't do anything, and they're easily disposed of, even though they're meant to come back at you again and again. There's no threat from them. Another threat is this German U-boat captain Prince, played by Jesse Plemons, who's the best thing in the film. Anytime it's with him, the director seems much more engaged. It's like, oh, this is fun. This is silly. And he seems to spend way too much time on him. Which tells you the director knew this was the only good thing in the film. But he's the best thing in the film, and he's been a ridiculous accent. It's like, well, I'd rather see that film with that guy rather than this other film. And it turns out, spoiler, but it's not a spoiler, because if you don't figure it out within about 20 minutes, you're a moron. As The Rock is one of the conquistadors, he's been living on the river for centuries. He's cursed like the others because, of course, he's cursed. But The Rock does not sell that at all. The Rock's meant to be a character who wants to die because he's lived for so long. Doesn't sell it. He's just The Rock. This is like movie style laziness acting 101. This is like Eddie Murphy at his worst type of level of bad movie star acting. This is Adam Sandler level of just laziness. It's hard to explain how bad The Rock is in this film, how boring he is, how he's doing every tick he's done, and it's like every joke, he's done these jokes a million times before. They make a joke about him doing all these dad jokes on the ride early on, but the whole film feels like that. The film feels like it's just all these same routines he's done. The films have done enough films, the Mummy films, the Pirates of the Caribbean, and the Pirates of the Caribbean and Johnny Depp being silly, and that helped a lot. And Jeffrey Rush, who are much better at this type of material. Here you have The Rock, who's not that good at it. He just does the same old stuff, and it's boring. You have all these scenes of these cussed conquistadors who could be cussed pirates or anything, and they do their stuff and now there's no consequence. You have scene after scene of these things happening. You've got a gay brother of Emily Blunt who's a boring character. I mean, he's okay, but he's not that interesting. And by the time we got to the second half of the movie, it's like they have nothing to do. There's no idea what to do with him. They have to get rid of him for some point and bring him back. And it's like the whole film is lazily written. The whole film has no momentum at all. It just is lazy. It's the exact opposite of Suicide Squad, where each element of Suicide Squad had a meaning. Like, it's silly, but we've got like a dramatic focus under the surface that will keep coming back and interesting you in some way. This is nothing. This is just bland nothing. This is like this is a film. This is exactly the film that deserves to bomb. It did not open well. It's not done well internationally. The Rock's claiming it's done well, and it's like I can add up. This has not done well. I mean, neither Suicide Squad, but Suicide Squad was much edgier. I feel bad for Suicide Squad. This one I don't, because this one is a mega budget mess of just garbage. This is just the laziest star vehicle you can ever see. And The Rock's going to go do Black Adam, which is his Dirty Harry movie. I doubt it. The Rock doesn't do that kind of stuff. He does not do darkness at all. But at least when he was in Fast and Furious movies, he had other people around him. He could be silly with him and he could actually drive him. I mean, he's so much better in the Fast and Furious movies than this. He's just lazy in this one. This is just bad. And you might get Hobbs and Shaw too, and Stephen might kind of prod him to be more fun, because I mean, Jumanji and Hobbs and Shaw were the only two things he's done recently that are enjoyable-ish. I mean, Hobbs and Shaw is fun, but it's lazy as hell as a script, but they've got a good director, pushed them forward. Statham's always good, and you've got that element going for you. Jumanji has a good director and a good cast, and that feels more of an ensemble. But even those ones, the last ones haven't the best writing. I mean, if you looked at Fast 8 was pretty bad. Hobbs and Shaw does not have a great script. It has fun actors, and The Rock does seem a bit more engaged in that one, because it gets to be a bit more R-rated. But the last Jumanji, the biggest liability in that film was The Rock trying to be Danny DeVito. I mean, everyone else was doing the work. I mean, Karen Gillan was actually carrying the film, rather than The Rock. He was the person who was doing the scene that everybody was like, those are not the best scenes. Kevin Hart's much better than you in this one. It's that kind of thing, is like, he wasn't that good in that film, and everyone knew it, and the film succeeded despite that. He's really a person who needs to start reading scripts and be more serious, because this and Skyscraper, this is like two loads within a couple of years of each other that are like, wow, these are really Eddie Murphy, Adam Sandler, lazy project type of thing. These are really like lowest of the low. I'm not reading scripts. I mean, compare them to doing something that Tom Cruise is doing with all those Mission Impossibles, which are very hard to make and they're very tough movies to make, and he's half killing himself. And you see something like this, it's like, wow, it's night and day. And if you see there's a Harley Quinn action scene in the Suicide Squad, that has more inventiveness in 2 minutes than this film has in its entire runtime. And it's way more exciting. It's like, this is a film so bad that even the films I've seen that are worse this year, like Chaos Walking and Monster Hunter, I'd much rather watch than this, because they're not as boring as this. This is tedium at its worst. This is just terrible. So anyway, that's me ranting enough about Jungle Cruise. Do not watch it. It's terrible. It's literally awful. So I hope you enjoyed my rant here. I hope you enjoyed my praise of one of the best films of the year, blockbuster wise, the Suicide Squad. It's a slight difference. You might spot a difference in my reaction. Okay, well that's me for the week. I hope you enjoyed all the videos. I'll see you next week. Right, bye for now.